Just a little note on theory to clarify the language I used in my last video. And this is philosophy 101 stuff. All philosophy majors know or should know it. But yeah, what I was talking about earlier was the contingent stuff. There's 4 categories. There's logically possible, the logically impossible, the contingently true, and the contingently false. We'll start with the logicals. Something which is logically possible is, we're not talking about whether or not it did happen or not. We're talking about, is it logically possible to happen? And this is actually kind of a broad definition. Because we're not talking about likelihoods here. We're talking more around the idea of, would it literally be contradictory for this to happen? So, like, imagine a car. Now imagine that car flying 500 feet in the air. The contingent likelihood of this is like nothing. Less than nothing. It's very bad. But it's still logically possible because I can say the car suddenly flew into the air without 500 feet, without it being a contradiction, without it being logically fallacious, without it being illogical. Now it would be contingently false, but we'll get to that later. So logically possible is really just a matter of, would it be a contradiction for it to happen, or is this sense just tautology, or one of the logical fallacies, one of the formal logical fallacies? So we're not talking about likelihoods, we're just talking about, is it logical or not? Logically impossible things are things that, by the very structure, nature of the sentence, cannot happen. And we're literally talking, and all these things here, we're talking about propositions. Because that's what philosophy, at least analytic philosophy, is all about. Analytic philosophy is all about testing propositions. See, in a proposition, also is a broad term, real fast, and I'll explain. A proposition is not, do you want to buy this? A proposition is basically any time you say that something is or is not. Now, I recommend everyone look this stuff up because I don't want anyone to ever trust me 100%. But yeah, that's what a proposition is. So if I say that is there or that is not there, so saying that something is or is not. So yeah, something logically impossible is something that is illogical to say. So if I were to say A is not A, or this thing is both an apple and an orange at the exact same time, having all the characteristics of apple and all the characteristics of orange, both in the same entity, then it would be illogical. I can call something an apple orange, but in that case, it wouldn't have all the characteristics of apples and oranges. It would be a mixture. It wouldn't have some apple characteristics, and it would have some orange characteristics, but it would have a mixture of the two sets of characteristics. So that makes sense, but they can't be contradictory. Some which is, and people forget about the logicals. People always focus on the contingents. The contingents are more along the lines of this proposition is true given certain conditions. So contingent truth and contingent falsity, it's all about the is. Did it happen or did it not happen? So something which is contingently true is something which it's been proven by it's true. It's proven's kind of narrow. It's not always the narrow truth is just what's been verified. It's contingently true of things that are happening, things that are real, things that are we normally think of as true. Contingently false, everything that's not happening or didn't happen. So in terms of propositions, a contingently true proposition would be I'm holding a water bottle. The contingently false proposition would be I'm not holding a water bottle. A logically impossible proposition would be A is not A. A logically possible proposition would be this is A. So yeah, just remember those 4 things. Remember that philosophy is mostly about propositions, lists of propositions, theories, and testing those propositions. Also, a second theoretical thing I want to bring up that gets missed in English a lot, which I don't see why they don't teach it in English, because it makes sense. when it comes, this can get very confusing in philosophy, because this sounds like a no doubt what I'm about to say, but it can get confusing, so it's important to mention. There's a difference between using a word and mentioning a word. This is called the use-mention distinction. We also refer to it as object and meta language. Meta is when you're talking about the language. Object language is when you're actually using the language. Right? Alright. So, I won't deal with that. The meta, right? But the use-mention distinction. There's a difference between John has 4 letters and John has 4 letters. When I'm using the word John, I'm literally saying that a guy named John has 4 letters, probably postal letters. And when I'm mentioning the word John, not using it, when I say John has 4 letters, and I'm just mentioning the word John, I'm saying that literally the word John has 4 letters. And also, don't trust me too much on the meta object stuff, because I learned about that like several months ago, and I might have gotten the details wrong, but that's not important. What's important is the understanding the use-mention distinction. That's all I need to know of the video. So, recap the terms: logically impossible, logically possible, contingent truth, contingent falsity, and the use-mention distinction.